Hey, welcome back. We have another episode of Learning in the Open, and I am so lucky to have my old friend Julia Pyper join me. She, in my opinion, is not only one of the best speakers about the subject of policy and how this all affects our transition. Julia, thank you for talking with me this morning.
I embody fake it till you make it, John. But here we are. Good to be with
That's
you.
that's totally fine. I mean, I remember years and years and years ago the visions of how we were going to communicate the message, and you've done such an outstanding job that this subject that we're going to talk about today, looking into both your and my crystal ball about 25 and beyond, 2025 and beyond, and how the federal government of the United States may participate in various portions of our transition and sort of tactics and maybe some things and tips that people could take advantage of. But how are you doing this morning?
I'm good. I think, we both were talking offline about how I've been traveling around. It's the end of the year's in sight, and yet it's a really busy time because
Totally.
obviously politics are shifting, but also end of year is just busy for everyone. You're trying to get your
Totally.
teams excited about 2025.
Yep.
At Good Leap, my day job, we're talking all about AI and ways of harnessing that in our business. So we're trying to get up to speed on just the technology shifts that are taking place around us. And of course, as someone who leads the policy team, policy and politics are certainly front of mind. So it's both like I can almost taste the sugar cookies, but like there's like a one last push to the end here.
Well, again, thanks so much for doing this. I just got back from the Department of Energy's Deploy 24 event in Washington, D.C. I thought I was going to a funeral, and it ended up
Really?
being incredibly informative. And the thing that I'd like to do just to start here is to thank our amazing colleagues, Secretary Granholm, Undersecretary Crane, the directors Chan of OTT, Shaw of LPO, Cummins from OSED, Sicardo from MESC, Rodriguez from OE, Robinson from Grid. I mean, these people have created an incredible process-driven, programmatic type of government engagement with private markets, with the utilities, with the grid operators, with the RTUs, the folks that are actually getting stuff done. And they invited private capital to like be there side by side as partners. So I just wanted to start by saying fantastic job to these people and to all the people that are under those great directors doing good work. So full stop. Awesome
Yeah,
job. Awesome job.
that's great. It's one of those.
I also want to thank two other people who are really important to this, to at least my mindset on all this stuff, which is Tate McDonald and Elizabeth Knowles at Holland and Knight. They are just like fantastically smart on these subjects and were really helpful in getting me up to speed and sort of how we share with our companies at Factor and beyond. Uh, that's the point of all this. So let's get started. Um, Tell me about your disposition. Obviously, I think that we have a new, as you said, changing politic, and there are some new priorities. So tell me about what you're learning, where things might go in 25.
Yeah, well, let me say, I hope that the deploy style conferences continue because I think we're thinking about industrial policy and energy at the center of it in America in new and different ways and seeing that cross collaboration. And I hope that continues on because that's just sort of a national imperative, I think, to have those types of leaders get together. My colleague Jake Asale was at Deploy. He was taking part in the virtual power plant workshops and
Yeah.
that's just something we have to figure out because we don't really want blackouts and we want to tackle our, peak demand and have a more resilient, affordable grid. Like we kind of need that regardless.
Hmm.
So all those underlying market drivers thinking of 2025 are still there. How
Yeah.
the heck are we going to power the AI revolution? I was at several different meetings this week as Good Leap, our company, which finances sustainable solutions in the home of all types, from heat pumps to solar to batteries. But we also do, efficient roofing and windows, et cetera. But we have, various leaders we were meeting with this week, some of whom are thinking about the intersection of geopolitics and AI. And America
Mm.
has to power this. It's kind of a national, it's not kind of, it really is a national security goal. We're not going to build enough power in America to lead on AI. That's why you see people like Sam Altman saying, how do we get nuclear fission happening again?
Yeah. Yeah.
I grew up in Canada, so I think Canada is going to be looked to as an ally, looking to like friendly nations in the Middle East, like, Abu Dhabi, the UAE. But these are like big energy questions at the
Yeah.
core of like what's going to drive our economy
Hmm.
over the coming years. And all of that's still true. So I think
Hmm.
everything people listening to this right now that they are working on is still going to be in high demand because we need electrons, we need power, we want it to be in America. But what does that look like? Obviously, we have a new, the Trump administration, comes back into office on January 20th. I think for the first time, and we talk about this on my podcast, Political Climate, there's a lot of alignment around domestic manufacturing, but definitely
Mm.
flavors of what that could look like. The term I think we're all going to have to start getting used to is FIOC, foreign entities of concern.
Yeah,
Maybe that came up this week
it
for you
did
in
a
DC,
lot.
right? So we think of domestic content, and if you're thinking about the Inflation Reduction Act and deploying clean energy, you're probably getting really familiar with the Treasury rules around how to take advantage of that bonus 10% and
Yeah.
all the rules around that.
Yep.
Components, subcomponents, layer on top of that, or perhaps in addition or instead of, how do you not procure anything from these foreign entities of concern? Think
Hmm.
China,
Hmm.
notably, but other countries too. And that could get really complex for every industry if it gets so restrictive as that you can't have screws, for instance, coming from a nation such as China, because we don't really make those subcomponents and smaller pieces of projects in America.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to have, yes, alignment around building more in America, energy being front and center. But what that looks like, the rules of the road are going to change a little bit. And so we're all going to figure out, what that looks like and how our industry can adapt, but also advocate in the meantime to make sure that we can still hit those bigger goals. And not have things like, not being able to build something because we can't get enough parts made in America. Hopefully, one day that happens, but it takes time to scale domestic manufacturing.
Totally right. Some things I wanted to tease out that you just hit on that are really important that I heard as very important themes. Certainly the foreign agencies of concern or foreign entities of concern, that was very clear. And China was front and center on that primarily. The other thing that you mentioned that is really, really important for a lot of our fellow participants in the energy community at large is that AI data centers are projected to require an additional 100 gigawatts of capacity by 2040. So that's just 16 years away. That means
Mhm.
we're building an additional capacity of about seven gigawatts of additional capacity per annum without stop for 16 years. Like that's an incredible growth rate because load has been relatively consistent as of recent, but it's not just AI. What I discovered from a brilliant guy from Amazon, former AMS or AWS, he said that we're only about 25 to 30% through the migration of enterprise to cloud.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we still have almost 70% of that migration to go into cloud data centers. And then we have this AI on top of it. And when I think people, we need to be very crisp, and you said it yourself, sovereignty is at risk if you lose the AI battle.
Yeah.
It means
Going into
military,
everything.
yeah,
Exactly. Military capabilities,
energy
companies.
capabilities,
Yeah,
discovery of
sure.
new materials. It is
Mhm.
just like you have lost the race if you're not at least in front and helping to steer the direction. And that requires enormous capacity increases in the energy stack in the United States, and also a tremendous amount of load flexibility, which means you have to have more resources like you do at GoodLeap, is
Yeah.
looking at VPP, virtual power plants and
Yeah.
saying, how can we control the load better? Maybe it's with resources that we put in, but maybe it's just controlling the load itself, right?
Yeah.
So that were two
And using
huge,
the system more efficiently, right? We only use it something like our system gets used at 40% today. Like we even
yeah,
have more available
yeah.
energy than we think we do. We need more of everything. I don't like the or discussions because I think we're at this phase, to your point, that it's such an existential motivator to win the technology leap that we're seeing. It's like the dawn of the internet among people I talk to who think the capabilities that AI unlocks. How do we stay ahead of that? You need energy for it. And so, yeah, so using the system more efficiently, we need all kinds of solutions for that.
Hmm.
Reconductoring to, smart load shifting, and certainly virtual power plants part of that, as well as just genuinely probably new power plants and more transmission too.
Hmm.
I've heard the line recently that there are moments when decades pass and not much happens. And then there are years where decades happen in that single year, right? Like we're in that latter moment where
We
like
are.
seeing a light year increase in technology change in front of us.
Yes.
I don't think it's all hype. I was kind of like, what is this AI? Who's the what's you? I can make a fun image or something on my phone.
No.
But the way it's being integrated now that I see, I think it will define nations for decades to come. So, interesting to hear those stats that you put out there. How's America going to build those 7 gigawatts? That's going to be in front of us.
Every year.
Right. And that's going
Every
to be
year.
the question that I think the next leaders in DC are already starting to grapple with. I mean, you
Yeah.
heard Senator Thune, now the new Senate
Hmm.
Majority Leader, who'll take
Correct.
control when Republicans can take control of the Senate, wanting to actually break up the reconciliation bill. So,
Mm.
reconciliation being the process, folks will remember, that was used to pass IRA, where if you control
Called the bird bath.
the bird bath, there's that. You got to watch out how you structure those policies. They have to be sort of budget and tax and fiscal in nature.
Yeah.
But they
Yeah.
have a couple bites at the apple to do that, Republicans, when they take control. And right, they only need that simple majority in the Senate. But he did say he wanted to break out actually some of the tax
Mm.
provisions from
Mm.
some of the energy provisions. So that's
Mm.
something I think everyone should start to watch for, because they
Mm.
talk about in the energy portion on the Senate side doing something to increase American energy production. What does that
Mm.
mean? Does sort of IRA stuff fall in that bucket, or is it going to be entirely in the tax bucket if they succeed in separating out these two kind of flavors of reconciliation bills?
Mm.
Or is there going to be one big mega package? Of course, everyone has big timelines, like we're going to pass something in 30 days or 100 days. Really hard to do, right? You're just getting up and running no matter who you are. And there's a lot they want to tackle. And then on the House side, I think if as of right now, based on who the Trump administration selected for other administration positions, there's only a 2 vote lead. And if there's another pick that's potentially brought into the administration side, it could be a 1 vote lead, at least for a portion of time until there's special elections to fill the
Mm.
vacant seats.
Mm.
So
Mm.
that's going to be interesting. And how do you move fast when you have such a narrow margin? And
Yeah.
so,
There's going to be compromise.
right, exactly.
Yes.
What does that look like?
Hmm.
But we
Hmm.
all, I think I wouldn't get anyone in the clean energy industry shouldn't be obviously too concerned. Well, be concerned. Be vigilant is actually what I want to say. Is
That's
like,
good.
be smart, learn, also tell your story, meet with these people. Have you like,
Hmm.
are we politically active? I feel like for the longest time, the clean energy industry was sort of like, well, we have a great product. It speaks for itself. We're kind of maybe overdue in realizing, no, we're big business. We're solving big problems. We need to be in the room. And so now's the time to have those conversations, because very much there is a lot up in the air, but you have to make your case. And as we know, the Republicans want to extend the tax cuts from the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and they are going
Yeah.
to find pay for it. So you got to make your case for why energy really is as critical as we've been saying it is just now.
Yeah, yeah. Well, some of the themes that came away were certainly what can you build the fastest? And if
Mm,
you can get the backlog on getting stuff on grid worked out, which, we've heard time and again that this new administration wants to focus on regulation and regulatory reform. Does that mean that we actually have a process that is more streamlined around getting solar on the grid, because solar is the fastest asset to deploy, bar none, and it is the lowest cost. So yes, does gas come in as a second? It does, but solar is absolutely the fastest and lowest cost to deploy. So our friends in the solar space should have some courage, and as you say, create coalitions. Go meet with your local representative from the House federal level. Go speak with your senators. Like literally, go meet them. Go make an appointment.
yes.
Go see their staff
Yeah.
in their offices in Washington D.C. Meet them at their home offices. Go meet your local representatives at state level. Another theme was money is going to push down as it always does, and also there are resources at state levels. California, New York, Texas, Colorado, Minnesota, Illinois, they have state resources that are really going counter to the wind trends of the federal government, and saying, wait, we can create jobs here, we can create manufacturing here. Let's invest in that. That's business development of our state. And that's
Keep
really
in mind,
positive.
as right, well, all of that is true. And a lot of the manufacturing and clean energy development is going in red states. And this is a
Yeah,
number that gets tossed around a lot. Something like 80% of IRA investments are going into red or swing states, with the majority in red districts.
yeah.
I think we need to make that real, though. I hear that stat a lot, and I'm like, cool, well, don't just end there. Make the case, show, to your point, have that
Commission
meeting,
these
make it
projects.
real.
Yeah,
Right.
commission
Yeah.
these
We want to
projects,
connect
hire those
that.
people, right?
Because we just keep telling ourselves in the clean energy community, but that's stat, right? So we're good. And it's like,
Mhm.
well, you gotta complete the sentence and like go do the work. So I would leave people with that a little bit too. And also I think a place I would love to get smarter on is, how do we connect the deploy with the development, down to honestly something that's prickly in America is more production on the mining side. This is key for the future of clean tech. You
Totally.
just saw China announce restrictions on certain critical minerals coming into the US,
Yes.
export bans.
Yes,
You see the Biden administration, I think they eased taxes on American development of critical minerals a few months ago.
they
They have
did. Yeah.
more favorable policy. You've seen folks like, Senator Daines, Republican of Montana,
Hmm.
who has valuable critical minerals in his state, write to the Treasury and say, hey, critical mineral development and extraction should qualify for the 45X tax credit.
Right.
I think it's good when you see senators getting into that level of detail, saying, okay, if you
Hmm.
want this to be a real thing, make sure you're thinking about the whole supply chain. Now, we can't ignore there are environmental considerations for extraction. I don't want to pretend like that's not something that has to be thought through on a community by
Right.
community basis.
Right.
But for the future, we're talking about a building 7 gigawatts, how
It's
to power all this stuff and lead as a nation. I think we have to think more about connecting the whole soup to nuts and having that be part of the same dialogue. We need both the market signals to develop and make in America, all the way down to the raw materials,
hmm
to be have on the other side of it a market signal for the deployment too. Otherwise, you make it and you may not have a market to take it up. So I think that's something that folks who are having advocacy conversations need to make sure we connect, because there's people who wouldn't necessarily care about clean energy deployment in the past. That wasn't their top motivator. But if we really do frame it again as this industrial policy, this national imperative,
hmm
a lot more universal agreement around it. We just have to explain in more specific policy terms what that looks like and how those two types of policies can speak to each other. The IRA did do that. It may look a little different, but how do we keep that theme going? Because I think it's so critical.
Yeah, well, I think that we shouldn't leave out BIL. We shouldn't leave out
Yeah.
chips. I mean, those are major pieces of legislation, huge wins for our country, and very operative. They were, bipartisan, and those are great things. Another real theme that I heard quite a bit is very short-term tactics of get your if you've won anything, even if it's a voucher or if it's a grant or if it's a loan guarantee or whatever it might be, you need to get it into contract
Mm.
immediately. You need to be careful of the details because they're very important, but you must get it into contract, which means it is obligated. If you don't do that, there's a very, very good chance that there's going to be some um, delays, clawbacks, rescindants, or whatever it might be. So please, everyone out there that has been successful, and Factor has a bunch of companies where we've helped them be successful in winning these things, get them into contract. Full stop. Good.
I
So
actually have a question for you on that, John. I
yeah.
mean, other timelines folks need to be aware of there. I know I think in the tax credit world so much right now, and we're
Mhm,
kind of
mhm,
already past the deadline for any more
mhm.
guidance to come out, that we could have maybe final guidance on Section 48E, these tech neutral tax credits. But of course, you're in that window where certain rules are easier to roll back by Congress through the CRA process.
Yeah.
So there's some other things that may not just, there's not enough time to get them done. Even if
Yeah.
they are done, they could be subject to rollback. Is that also true on the grants and loan side? Are there
Well,
deadlines we
they
should
have
have in
something
mind?
called, I think it's called the midnight period or the overnight
Mhm.
period or something like that, where a
Right.
certain
Yeah.
amount of time before an administrative transition, you roll back to a certain period and you say, this is our
Right.
midnight period. And then
Mhm.
anything that happens under that window then becomes apparently it's subject to question.
Right.
So as soon as you possibly can is the answer, right? And that and then we all expect very uh, very quiet moments at the federal government as it relates to almost anything. As the new administration comes in, they're trying to find out where the bathroom is for the, these sorts of
It's a
just,
busy time, yeah.
it's a very busy time. So, we shouldn't expect anything from the Department of Energy, Department of Transportation, because obviously our transition is electrification or alt fuels or whatever it might be. We cross a lot of boundaries. We're in HUD, we're in BLM, we're across the federal government. And these transition periods can mean relative ineffectiveness for 3, 6, 9 months. That means we're into September before we're really starting to get the gears going and we sort of really understand how the new system's going to work. But nevertheless, I want to transition now really quickly to just some sort of more rapid fire stuff. Where do
Yes.
we see areas of support? Where do we see some challenges? So I'm going to start with you. Areas of support where you think, I mean, we discussed fast deploying solar, if you can get rid of the bottleneck at the interconnect. Where else do you see some things? You said nuclear as well. What's your, do you feel, yes, nuclear is going to be supported?
So yeah, broadly in this political moment, yes, I do. I think there's support for any number of things if you make the case for them. Um, Honestly, it's really hard to say because we have to find trillions of dollars. They have to find trillions of dollars, Congress, to pay for extending the tax cuts. And so it's hard to sit here and anyone who tells you they think they know what's going to be in that reconciliation bill, we don't know yet. That
No
would be
one knows.
I mean, even Medicaid and Medicare core programs that actually are very, very popular, like those are under consideration. So who's to say clean energy, anything clean energy or energy related, full stop, couldn't be under consideration. But if you had to say, yes, I mean, I think there's already votes around the Advance Act on nuclear power passed on a bipartisan basis recently to try and, increase nuclear development in the US. Major support for that across the board.
Hmm.
We've seen a lot around permitting, and I think that's a
Hmm.
major area that you can continue to see support. It will address both fossil resources
Yep.
and also potentially clean energy resources. That would
Yep.
be the goal of that bill is just to make it easier and faster to build in America without getting so
Hmm.
many legal loopholes.
Hmm.
Emily Dominich, who's my podcast co-host, was on the Hill, worked for both speakers of the House. She talks a lot about the potential for permitting and being an area of a bright spot that she actually contends will make life better for clean energy developers than it has been the past several years. So she feels bullish on
I
that.
agree
So
with Emily on that.
there you go.
We
So I
may
would
see it,
expect
we may see a lot of unsavory things happen, but I think that
the
hopefully writ large we'll see better things happen.
So yeah, maybe that's my area of support there is around permitting reform that will have benefits for clean energy.
You also mentioned critical minerals, which I agree with
Yes.
you on. I think it's going to have a lot of support. The largest nickel mine in the United States happens to be in Michigan, which is a sort of an important place. The other place that critical minerals, zinc, there's a bunch of zinc mines in Tennessee, and Alaska.
Arkansas just has found a huge lithium deposit. Montana,
Exactly. Yeah. And
a lot of states.
just despite the way people might feel about California across the nation, the largest lithium laden brine happens to be in the state of California. And
See, yeah,
representatively, it is similar to the size of Saudi Arabia is to the oil and gas business, apparently.
oh wow,
So
yeah.
incredible resources right here, and I think that it
Got to
has
figure out how to access them but
totally right.
yes,
And then the other
certainly
thing, actually, I said
opportunity.
right, but I did hear some very, very good things about the nominated secretary, Chris Wright, is that he's a very practical person and that he's a business focused person. And if the solution makes sense, he's at least willing to listen. And he, in fact, has been involved with advanced geothermal company. So that's really, I think, positive. He's spoken well about nuclear that you mentioned before. And of course, he's big on natural gas. And if we can decarbonize natural gas in some ways, various ways, maybe it's through monitoring systems of pipelines and obviously at the point of use or something else, that could work out very well.
Yeah, and I'll also say, since you mentioned personnel, I was just pulling up the name Scott Bessent, think I'm saying
Mm,
his name right, who's selected to lead the Treasury Department.
correct.
He's
Yeah,
another, well-known financial leader and expected to bring, understand investment timelines, investment
right.
horizons. I don't know that he has any connection to clean energy, but would certainly understand the imperative for businesses, like folks maybe listening, of billions of dollars that they have lined up to go invest in the US economy. Someone of his background would certainly understand the wheels that are in motion to make all that happen and the economic benefits that can come from seeing it through.
Yes, absolutely. It's going to be an interesting period coming forward for all of us. I just want to finish by sort of banging out four key elements that I heard coming from the new administration as priorities. You mentioned one of them, which was permitting, getting regulation a little more streamlined so that permitting can happen faster. Yes, that does mean oil and gas, but it also could be a real benefit to our clean economy stuff, if it's EV charging or whatever it might be. Um, the theme of energy dominance from the new administration seems to be quite clear. And so when you're speaking about what you're doing, domestic content, job creation, these kinds of things are really important, but also projecting power in some way. Like we can create it cheaper, smarter, better. This projects American-ness around the world for someone who feels it's important to project in that way. And then the final two things is onshoring. We talked about that, creating jobs, manufacturing, mining,
Mhm.
service jobs here in the United States around the things that we do. And the last one is the one we started on, which is beat China. And I'm no xenophobe at all. I think they're, brilliant strategists. They just set a 25-year course and they followed their course and they happen to have a great growth period that could fund all this stuff. But we need to onshore end-to-end supply chains and we need to build manufacturing here. And I think we can do that. We can do that together.
Well, there you go. There's an optimistic note to end on as folks head toward the end of the year.
We're gonna
Look,
have to do this once a year then. We'll have to do a
yes.
look back.
Well, that would be super fun. Always happy to chat with you and always learn so much from you. I can't remember. I think we were in China together for maybe one of the New Energy Nexus conferences at one point, just
Yeah,
learning from startups there. American
correct.
startups were on the trip as well. And it's just a testament to like, we do have a lot to learn from each other. It's a new era of, there was a lot of collaboration on climate through COP agreements and Montreal Protocol before that. I think we're in this to sort of end on another sort of wild card is how does geopolitics play into so much of what we see going forward? We do need continued
Mhm.
collaboration on clean tech. At the
Yes.
same time, we're seeing more stark lines on the geopolitical front. And those are very serious. And so it's going to be an interesting moment that I think folks in our industry are going to have to think globally, maybe in new and different ways as we move forward, kind of to your point, not just for framing, but literally how does what we do support, the America in this moment. It's going to be a very fascinating time. Can't
Yeah.
wait to read the history books when we look back.
But, Julia, when you look at it, American energy excellence that can be imported to support everyone survive this moment and thrive in this moment would be really a special outcome of all this. So it's not something that's unique specifically to America, but we happen to have a really great toolbox here in terms of personnel and environment and some, rule of law, et cetera, some things that are important to make these businesses successful. And so business-led, government-supported types of work is just critical. So thank you, thank you, thank you for joining this very
Or
modest learning in the open kind of
last thought,
environment.
maybe the deploy
Please.
conference next year will be build, deploy, export conference. And we'll get the other two words. We do the full range of soup to nuts
Yeah,
there and talk about America leading on all three.
sounds fantastic. Let's do
Pitch that
that.
to the organizers.
Have a great holiday. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.